Welcome to a new video. Let's take a look at some new malicious compliance stories. The first story is called, No Parking Without a Permit. I live in a suburban street that is narrow and has limited parking, so parking is restricted to residents. Each household gets one parking permit that you need to display in your car if you want to park on the street. My boyfriend doesn't live with me and doesn't have a parking permit, so he parks in a nearby parking lot. It's not a big deal since it's just 2 minutes away by foot. A couple of weeks ago, my boyfriend was staying over for the weekend and we go grocery shopping. On our way home, he decides to stop in front of my house so we wouldn't have to carry our bags from the parking lot. The car was parked there for 5 minutes while we were unloading the groceries, and there were plenty of empty spots at that time of day. As my boyfriend is getting back in the car, my old next-door neighbor walks up to him and tells him in a very accusatory tone that non-residents can't park there. We try to explain that we were only dropping off our groceries and we'll be moving the car now, but the old neighbor was very rude to us and accused of blocking the traffic and stealing spots from the residents and other nonsense. He ends up threatening to call the cops if we dare park in the street again without a permit. This neighbor has a reputation for being a royal pain, and it's not the first time he's complained to me about trivial things. Here's where the malicious compliance comes in. I don't have a car, therefore I have a parking permit that's been sitting unused ever since I moved in. I asked a friend whose husband is a cop and found out that any car can use my parking permit. It doesn't have to be registered under my name. Basically, if you have a house on this street, you're allowed to park one car on this street. I did what any petty human would do and gave my permit to my boyfriend. He now parks in front of my house anytime he comes over. And the old man neighbor is livid about it but can't do anything because the car has a permit. The next story is called, ID Required. This is about my father. He worked at a high school that required IDs for the students and the teachers alike. Pretty common for public schools, and equally common are the petty teachers that enforce that rule like it's the only thing keeping the school together. My dad doesn't care. He tells his class as much. If you're in class, you're fine. Don't worry about it with me. Other teachers in his department did not like my dad's attitude towards the IDs. It wasn't taking class time and he wasn't writing students up. So, his class's behavior seemed better and he was getting through the material the smallest bit faster. It's also not nepotistic for me to say he was one of maybe 3 good teachers in the department and got the highest standardized test scores on average. The only people who took his class and failed his area on it, history, were kids who seemingly tanked the tests on purpose. So the petty teachers who didn't like him were out to get him. The next year rolls around. It's been announced that everyone needs to be enforcing the rules about the IDs harder. So, my dad has to write people up for it. He hasn't been caring before, so he hardly notices when the kids don't have them. And his deal to the kids was that if he forgot it, he wouldn't write them up. One day he left it in his car and walked past the petty teachers who noticed and didn't say anything to him. They went to the principal, who had hired my dad and was his friend, instead of the assistant they were supposed to take it up with. She told him to make sure to wear his ID and told them to only come to her if there was something that would distract from teaching. He said that would be fine, went home to get it and got back to work. That was his 5th year at the school, and each year they issue a new ID. He had 2 that were on those extendable leads with the belt clip, and 3 on lanyards. He also scanned one and had it printed on an iron-on sheet. Then, he ironed it onto one of those shirts from the 5-packs from Walmart, and the next day wore one of the blank shirts, his new iron-on over that, both of his clip-on IDs, and his 3 lanyards. Lo and behold, the teachers who complained over him were waiting by the door and, as per his description, red-faced at what he did. He smiled and waved as he went past, and got to his room. He then took off his sport coat, the IDs and ID shirt, and put the sport coat back on over the other blank shirt. He stuffed 4 of the 5 IDs and the shirt into an empty drawer in his desk and waited for students to start coming in. A few minutes later, the principal comes in with the main complainer. And he's just sitting there, completely normal, one ID clipped to his belt, and he stands to shake the principal's hand. She says good morning, glares at the other teacher, and the complainer walks away. When they're out of earshot, she just says, "Let me see the shirt." They have a laugh, and nobody bothered him about his ID again. For true just desserts, that teacher later got into a screaming match with my dad where they did all the screaming. The cameras caught it all, including the 3 times my dad tried to walk away before being stopped, and the teacher was no longer working there by the end of the semester. The third story is called, Email Approval System. In 2018, I worked at a small IT company on the coast, and on this day, I received an angry email. It is from the CEO of an import and export company, a man with 2 faces. Let's call him Scott. On the one hand, while everything is going well, Scott is jovial and pleasant to work with, if you can call empty platitudes pleasant. However, when he doesn't get his way, the man is an infant throwing a tantrum. Scott is an ideas man and likes to delegate, which is good for a CEO. Scott also likes to micromanage and is an expert on how things should work, not how they do work, which is less good for a CEO. The email was an odd thing. It starts by eloquently threatening that Scott will find another provider if we can't fix his spam issue. I tell my boss, who just shrugs. Shock and awe, they're bad with paying their bills and never follow up on things they ask us to quote. So he tells me to handle it however I like and not to feel bad if they move on. Scott is getting a lot of spam. This has been an ongoing problem, not solved with the spam filtering we set up for his company. The reason? Scott scours the web, looking for the cheapest products to get his sales team to flip, and signs up to a lot of newsletters from reputable senders. So he's spam? Not really spam. Hence why the filter doesn't catch it as it does with the over 3,000 other emails that hit his company daily. For a while now, I've penciled myself in to manually block senders in Outlook for him. But this sends them to his junk folder. And he doesn't like looking at it. And no, I'm not allowed to set it to automatically delete things in the junk folder. What if there's something important? I've told him, he really needs to unsubscribe from things and not subscribe to more, but he's got a better solution, tacked onto the bottom of the mail. He wants us to introduce an email approval system. No email is to come into the company without directly being on an approved list. For those who have not studied the art of technomancy in the beige towers, that's 3 words, strung together, that don't actually mean much. My eye twitches. I work on it for a day. It must exist and I haven't heard of it. I search the web and come across an old system from the early 90s that everybody hated, that would block all mail until the person sending something replies to an automatic message confirming they're human. It was discontinued quite fast. I call Scott and ask him for an example of this nebulous tech he wants. It's something that my friend who works for this other company has. Sure, I can ask him what it's called. Days pass. Another angry email asking where we were at with the project. I tell him I was waiting for him to get back to me with the program's name. His friend said he didn't know the program's name. It was a lie. Scott has no friends. I've spent too much time on this. My eye twitches. I'm done trying to be helpful. What the man wants is a secretary, not an IT system. I scanned his original email's requirements. Block all email coming in unless approved? My man, have I got you covered. The spam filter we had set up for him can absolutely be set to block all mail. That's his over 100 daily digests of mailing lists, in addition to the over 3,000 spam messages it blocks, before legitimate mail for all employees. As for the approval list, Scott never mentioned who would be doing the approving. It certainly wasn't going to be us. So I made him an admin account on the filter, wrote up a guide on how to navigate it and approve addresses, and handed it over. I told him I'd turn the block on once he had a chance to familiarize himself with the process and ask any questions. True malice would have been to turn this thing on. Never heard back. Never disputed the bill. Still unaccountably our client. The last story is called, That's Not What You Think It Is. I work at a small Chinese restaurant that generally only has locals and regulars with the odd visit from out of the area. Because it's so small on a normal day or night, we will only have 1 waitress on a shift. We were having a relatively quiet night. So I was sitting around pouring soy sauce into bottles and cleaning chili jars. This table of 4 people walk in and they're all relatively nice and I give them the good old casual greeting and seat them down. They do their stuff and order their meal, and for drinks, they only get table water, which is normal. When I bring out their food, the old man at the table asks for a bottle of red wine. Now we don't serve alcohol, nor do we even have one. I'm not yet 18, so I can't even handle alcohol if we did. I told him we don't have any alcohol, and he goes on this rage pointing out a bottle that was on our shelf. I knew what he was pointing to. It was our Chinese vinegar. Now, these bottles look remarkably like Asian alcohol. They're green with red on it and all the writing is in Chinese. And I told him that, sir, that's vinegar, not wine. He went on a rage, yelling about how I couldn't know what alcohol was cause I was underage and how I was hiding alcohol from him, and he would make a complaint on our Facebook page. His children and wife look embarrassed and are trying to hide themselves. His wife gives me a look that just says, do it and he'll regret it. So, I went and got a bottle of vinegar and put it on the table. He makes a really big deal out of it, saying things like, waitresses in my day would have done it in 2 seconds. I walk away, and when I turn around to check, he'd spat a mouthful of vinegar out and onto the plate and was trying to wash out the taste of Chinese vinegar with water. To be fair, the wife did come up to me later and apologize for his idiocy. They never made that Facebook post and paid $20 for the bottle since we couldn't use it again. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider subscribing to the channel for more content. Let me know what you think about the stories in the comment section below. Have a great day. Bye bye.